All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. We are live in person, so we're going to see how this goes. Just for a note for people on video, Facebook Live is not letting us connect, so we are live on Periscope tonight. I'll try to feed their post a live video on Facebook after this is over, but we'll see how it goes. So hopefully you're able to view it. If not, you can download it as a podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, basically all your podcast spots. But we're going to go ahead and get right into it with high tempo. What do you got for us this week, Matt?
Funny that last week we spoke about the Ball brothers and how they're playing overseas, and now that the youngest one was transferring to Ohio. I saw they released today that LaMelo Ball and also RJ Hampton are deciding to opt to play over in Australia now. So kind of piggybacking off of what we discussed last week. Going over to Australia, trying to reap the payoff of not having to go to college to spend that year or two there. Mixed feelings on how this is going to play out. What do you think about the move?
I think you're coming down to just trying to keep your name in the media cycle at this point. How many times are you going to change your plans? And every time they do, their dad gets airtime on television. I saw he was on ESPN or Fox, one of those the other day. I was at a bar, and they always have those playing around like lunchtime. And you know that they're just doing that to keep their name out there. And I honestly forgot about that kid because he had, one of them had toured Michigan before Beeline had went to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so I was looking back at what recruits that Juwan Howard might be able to bring in, and I came across their names, and I saw that if they go overseas, whatever they need to do to help build their brand, the Big Baller brand, they had their All-Star game for the first time, or their All-American game, and I've heard rumors that is going to be their last one, if that's not already finalized. So I don't follow the high school circuit that closely, so I don't know. But we'll see what happens there. Got anything else for us?
I just was surprised that comparing the Australian League with those lower level NBA G Leagues, the G League's offering $125,000 starting out for players that are opting out of college and going into the G League. I think that's a major roll the dice on yourself move. If they're only offering it to select high school athletes. But talk about betting on yourself. If you run that risk and you go that route, then you completely ruin your chances of going back and playing collegiately or to increase your stock. It's kind of like you're just putting it all out there, and if it doesn't work, then we'll see you on the street in a couple years.
Yeah, because that's not – I don't know how the guaranteed contracts work, but that's not enough to sustain you for your entire career. You see it with the Women's World Cup that's going on. They always, I think we hit on it last week, they talk about their salaries, how they only get paid, the top players get paid close to six figures, everyone else under that. It might be a nice yearly salary, but you're not playing soccer until you're 65. So you're not playing basketball even that long. I think you'd play soccer longer than you would basketball. So every year they're going to have a chance to bring in new athletes from college or high school around the world. And there's a chance you get cut. And sure, you made $100 and whatever you said, $100-something thousand, but that might last you a year or two. Plus, you're already paying half of that for your rent and things like that. So definitely a risky proposition. But we'll see what happens with the NCAA. They're supposedly investigating some college programs. So what I'm bringing in today is the news just broke that the University of Maryland basketball programs, I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but I think men's and women's are going to be hit with allegations from the NCAA for some type of dumb recruiting violations. And I think it was like they're giving too many examples of like what the athlete looks in their jersey, which is a thing called edits these days for people that don't follow recruiting that closely. So they make like fake programs, put their name in their jersey.
Was it a self-report violation, or was it an NCAA came down on them for?
I think that they settled. I don't know if they self-reported it, but I think that they came up with some of the penalties, which include like losing 2 hours of practice a week, which you might not think, oh, that's not a lot. But compared to other teams, they also have to have the compliance officer follow their team to 4 away games and a couple random home games, and then every postseason game, which I'll be honest, I had thought that Harbaugh, when he came to Michigan, said that for football, he has compliance at every major thing that they do. Why aren't these other schools having that as part of their compliance thing anyway?
Because they don't want to pay the money. It comes down to dollars and cents. If you don't have to pay for it, then just roll the dice. And if you learned anything from the UNC stuff, just say no, you're not going to comply with it. You're going to come down with some mandate. Nah, we're good. Don't worry about it. And nothing will ever happen.
But that's a big gamble. And you could easily just take whatever responsibility and say, hey, we have compliance here, bug off. If they want to come and say, hey, you gave too many programs, like, compliance was there. Like, forget it. Go talk to them, and then you're not hit with these stupid penalties. I think, Matt, the Big Ten money that's coming in from television networks is what, $50 million? They can't pay a couple of compliance officers. It's not like they're paying like 20 of them. You only have a handful of them, and you can pretty much use them at all sports. I mean, how many sports have games simultaneously? 5 max? I don't even know if it's that many.
But I wonder if you're bringing those compliance, like, who are they following around? Because if they're with the head coach, that's not to say that the assistant coaches underneath him aren't doing things that they shouldn't be doing with recruits and, you know, offering those other benefits that you can find the loophole around that.
The Rick Pitino excuse. You don't know, coach. As a head coach, is that your excuse?
Well, there are certain things that you may not have full control over. This is the state penitentiary.
I know, but as long as you have that compliance guy, I think that you have enough benefit of a doubt that you can go ahead and do the UNC defense and say, hey, come show it. Show it. The head coach didn't know. I mean, do they even care if the head coach knows? Sean Miller, look at that guy from LSU basketball. Did they care? They let him come right back. And he's still signing another top recruiting class. Where's the justice? And then Maryland, not that I'm a big fan of Maryland, but come on. Guys, dumb. Even if I don't know if you self-reported this or what, but why? Who cares? You're already under investigation for the FBI thing for paying players.
Well, I mean, that's almost like what Alabama did. Alabama they self-reported on recruiting violations, and it's just like they self-reported, slap on the wrist, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, but I feel like at this point, the NCAA doesn't have any teeth. So Maryland should have just been like, nah, wait and see what your other investigation brings up. Because the sheet's already out. Maryland wasn't one of the top paying schools. So if they would come back and say, well, Maryland, we're going to lump you in and give you the death penalty, they can be like, what happened to these other schools that were paying much? Like, did you hit Arizona? Like, we're not going to accept that penalty. And I think that a couple state governments sticking together and saying, we're not accepting that because there's an FBI trial that proves other schools did way worse. I think the ball was in their court, and I think they could have just sat on it. But that's enough for college talk. Let's get into some of our Pittsburgh topics here. First one, Ollie Määttä got traded for the Penguins, and I think it was a good move. They're getting a little bit younger. It wasn't what I expected, but let's hit on that one first, Matt.
Yeah, I liked Määttä, and I saw, trading defensemen for forward. My initial reaction was I didn't like it, but if it brings some youth to the roster and it brings some speed, that was the thing that I think really hurt them this past season. Is I think they're getting a little bit older, they're a little bit slower, and if they can bring some speed back into that lineup, they can kind of play the way Rutherford wants them playing and being more aggressive, up-tempo style of play. That if it plays out, then I'm all for it. But I definitely think they have to address the defense one way or another.
Yeah, I would say try to get younger. I think what they laid out as a plan for the team is, we all talked about it. Everyone has been hitting on it. The window was very short. You had this past year, didn't get it done. Maybe 1 or 2 more years with this current roster. By trading away some of your assets to try to get younger, their idea is to extend it a little bit, try to keep that window open instead of going into a complete rebuild that we thought was going to happen, because you still have the expansion draft that's going to be coming up. So you're going to lose players either way, which is going to hurt, just like it hurt last time with Vegas. And I think that hurt Penguins more than anyone, because you took away
Depth.
top tier goalie.
You took depth is what you took.
Yeah, so you're looking at it now. Try to get younger. I actually don't mind it because you have a once-in-a-generation superstar on your team in Crosby. Whether people like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He is that high of an impact player. So keep him around. Look at what happened with LeBron James. Cleveland wasn't able to keep him around. Now the Lakers are making crazy moves to try to keep him relevant. And I think that the Penguins are kind of in that same boat. Get people younger around them. Try to keep them there forever. Keep the legacy. Don't let him go like Cleveland let LeBron go. And I know it's a little bit different in each sport, but I like the moves. I wouldn't want to see a total rebuild that's just going to waste years of his career.
And I don't think that they have to go the route of completely blowing things up, but I do think that in one way or another, they do have to start making some moves and getting some guys motivated. And I think that's where the Kessel trade or attempted trade comes into play, because he's been good, but he isn't fitting with what they need to be doing as far as restructuring the way the team is. So they're actively shopping him, and with him vetoing this trade to the Wild, I think that could spell some trouble for him, because if he's not willing to go, they may force Pittsburgh's hands, and they may just end up cutting him.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was next on our docket. If you have the video stream up, you can see Kessel blocked his trade. The rumors came out, it was verified by Rutherford yesterday, I believe, that they had a deal. They haven't let too much leak, but it looks like it was a deal with the Wild. And, of course, he has the veto power, just like you hear from players that have like the no-trade clause or whatever. And so he blocks it. Everyone thought he was going to be moved. He had to have known that he was on the chopping block. But now, to be honest, I actually don't mind keeping him on the roster, because that's a tough position to fill. But at the same time, if you're going to try to do a half rebuild now, do it. Try to go all in. And like you said, I don't know if they're going to be that extreme where they're going to end up cutting him, but it can't help his position in the locker room and his willingness to work with this team. I feel like when you start to do things like that, you're going to get the resentment. We complained about Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell in football all the time. Now you have Kessel blocking trades. Where do you go from here?
Well, I think the thing that's different with Kessel is that he was the final piece that kind of kick-started their Stanley Cup runs. Everything else was in place. They had the speed. They had the movements going around that they could make it work. When they got to the point where now that the players are getting a little bit older and they need him to fill some other roles, he's still going to at times take shifts off or take poor shots that's going to affect the team that in the last couple seasons they were able to compensate for, but now they're not able to get by with him just kind of doing things his way or taking series off or kind of just going back and forth. So I think that does hurt him.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we have to wait and see how the rest of the moves shake out, because we need to see what the roster looks like going into next year. I don't know if they're not going to get rid of him. We don't know that. It might come down that he finds a better situation for himself and accepts a trade, but we'll see. Right now, I don't mind what the Penguins are doing. I like to see them doing something, because on the other side in Pittsburgh, we see the Pirates do absolutely nothing every year except for get rid of guys. At least they're trying to get younger, and they have a plan, and they've publicly stated that plan. So people that are looking for veterans now know that the Penguins are willing to deal them, and guess what? They still have some championship veterans on their team that can help solidify. Look at what just happened with Toronto. We're going to hit later in the show in basketball. You bring in some championship winning players into some situations where you have a lot of young guys and some talent, you can win a championship. So I would see that even though that trade was vetoed, you might see a lot of other contenders or at least young teams willing to make that move. And I mean, look at it like someone like the Avalanche that have been making a move. They're still typically younger than most teams that have been in the playoffs. You need some guys that might help put you over the top. And what better place to get them than Pittsburgh, last team to win back-to-back cups?
Absolutely.
So I want to hit on the NBA thing. I didn't put it on the docket. I almost forgot about it. But Davis, they talk about him as like he's the greatest center of all time. And I don't know if you saw this, but he gets traded to the Lakers for your man Ball.
Yes.
And like a ton of first-round picks.
Which I think is why LeVar's back in the news. Because now that, I forget which one it is now, gets traded over they get out of the big market in LA, and he immediately went out and LeVar started just bad-mouthing the Lakers, saying it's the biggest regret that they're going to ever make, trade him off. I don't know that I like that move. I mean, I understand the logic behind it because LeBron's time to win is right now. His time to stay relevant is right now. So they don't have time to develop all these draft picks. So it's make the moves, get the veteran players around him that are going to support him. And with the draw with those two, do you think that brings in a guy like Kyrie over now in free agency?
I'll say they are almost betting that they're going to be able to bring someone in. I don't know if it's going to be him. But I will say this. I don't understand the appeal of needing to get Davis for LeBron to be competitive. Because LeBron has never worked with a down-low center like that. Think about it. They had They tried to get Shaq that one year. Didn't really work. He's much better when you have a 5 like Chris Bosh that everyone hates.
Wasn't Villanueva a big center for Cleveland?
Yeah, but he was more of away from the basket guy. So you have Bosh, like think of Miami. He's better when the 5 guy can stretch out a little bit, hit some shots, and let him drive. I don't know if Davis can do that. They talk about him like he can. Think of like what Garnett was able to do with the Celtics. When you have a guy that can consistently hit 18-footers, long twos, you can open some things up. That's the game where he's going to have to play. But if you watch any of those LeBron years, when it comes crunch time, he's going to get in the paint. He's going to get his points. I don't know even if with his age slowing him down, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to evolve into a step-back shooter, similar to like how Paul Pierce broke down. He didn't have the speed at a certain point, so he was always hitting those like fadeaway jumpers. Can LeBron evolve into that guy? I mean, his work ethic's there. He has the skill, so I wouldn't put it past him. But for what they lost, I don't think that they made the right choice. Because now you're betting on free agency, and you're going to gamble on maybe a 1 or 2 year run. And as you've seen in the past with these LeBron teams that come together, it takes a year or two for chemistry to come into play. Kyrie, I'm kind of plugged into some of the Celtics channels, not that much, but it seems like he's looking more towards the New York market, mainly Brooklyn, from what I've heard. And so that's the guy that he's had a public beef with LeBron. I know he's apologized, but that's the kind of chemistry that LeBron needs to get in LA for it to work, honestly, because he's kind of past his prime. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it.
Well, then maybe bring in Kawhi Leonard, free agent. They just poach him out of Toronto.
Well, I'm going to get into the Raptors later, but I don't think he needs to. I think Kawhi, I mentioned it last week, if he gets it done, he's going to be the premier superstar, or he should be the premier superstar in the NBA. And why not? How many other guys can go from 2 teams and lead them to championships? His defense helped the Spurs win that one championship when he was a rookie, or in year 2 or 3. I can't even remember. He helped win that one, and that was a big part. It was his defense. Then he comes to Toronto, basically carries the team. Why would he want to be the third wheel behind LeBron? He proved that he can do it himself. He's better off just either staying there, seeing if he can do it again. I don't know what their other contract situation is going to be like, but even if it's a 1-year rental, love it. Keep it going. Let's get into that in a little bit. We'll circle back around, but let's get into our other Pittsburgh topic here. All-Star voting. Bell, do you think he should be first baseman in the All-Star game?
I think so. Who else would Pittsburgh have to represent?
It's not even about representing. He's like the number 1 first baseman in the National League by far. But I just wanted to bring that up because I saw an article written by a newspaper in Chicago that said and this isn't even joking. I think I sent it to you. Maybe it was even ESPN that said it. I can't remember now. But they had said that if you look at the combined stats, sure, Bell is better this year. But we think you should take into account All-Star voters how much better Rizzo was in 2017. Not even a joke, Matt. They wanted you to look at past historical performances and give a weight to that when you're All-Star voting, which is complete bullshit. Because why would they want a Pirates guy in there? And guess what? He's still on, I think, the rookie minimum. And I think he's locked up for a couple more years. So as much dread as I have that the Pirates are going to trade him, if it happens this year, they should burn the stadium down. Because I think the way the contract works, and he's at least locked up until the 2020. I mean, it might even be to 2023, if I'm being honest. I don't know how long of a term he signed. Now, there's no reason to move him. And if you're holding him out of the All-Star game for a petty reason like that he plays for Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh sucks, that's just wrong. Give credit where credit is due. I mean, look at what happened to Barry Bonds when he was in Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh wasn't a small market team back then. They were trying to actively win, and he was great, and he ended up being great. But right now, you have the best first baseman. Stop making it a joke. The All-Star voting, I made the topic All-Star voting because I hate the way that they want fans to vote. It's not like a popularity contest, but it's not. They can't. Basically, how it comes down to from the tech side is they can't limit you to only one vote. As much as they want to, unless they have you sign up with an email, but then you can always spoof an email. Maybe if they have you sign up for some account with your phone number, which a lot of people aren't going to do, that's the only way they can kind of keep you to one vote per person, is to maybe text in your vote. So what they do instead is you can vote as many times as you want.
So they just have groupies that are just
or you just have
all day, every
you just
day.
pay someone to write a few bots, and then you have them vote every day. And I think it's bullshit, and it's so dumb. Like, why is that the deciding factor in the All-Star game? It was revealed that he's leading in first base votes anyway, but then you're just going into a social media contest, and it just doesn't make sense because you're talking about the integrity of the game, and we have all these unwritten rules that we can't break because people's feelings might be hurt, and then you go ahead and have the All-Star game decided like that. It just blows my mind. Like, why are you so uptight on some old rules? Like, hey, batters should be able to change their gloves every pitch if they want and take 38 minutes in between swings. But that's just the way the game is played. But no, All-Star voting, let's just go all in. Anyone can just randomly vote online as many times as they want.
Well, that way you get the bigger market Chicago fans that are going to be pulling for Rizzo as opposed to the Pirates who really aren't having the following and things like that. So it makes sense to try to pull the guys that are going to make you the most money.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing right there is that they're trying to bring in the bigger market and trying to get teams like New York well represented because they know that that's what brings in television money and television contracts. And it just hurts the little guys, and I don't honestly think that there's anything they can do about it. I've thought about bringing in a salary cap for Major League Baseball for a while, but there's pluses and minuses. You have right now unlimited potential for players. You can get them paid whatever you want. And then you look at the NBA, they're kind of limited. And is the salary cap helping? No. Because what if they structure it like that? Players can still team up wherever they want to go. Look at the NFL. They have one, but they have more players. So I think you'd be closer to almost like an NFL salary cap from major league teams where you're not going to get the superstars all teaming up because you'd have way more, like a greater amount of roster spots to fill compared to basketball. You can basically team up three guys, have enough money for them, and still win a championship. That with baseball, you could have three great pitchers and still suck because you don't have any bats in the lineup. So I think it would be tougher, and I don't want to see that happen just for Pittsburgh's reason. I mean, it was pretty public that Mark Cuban wanted to buy the team. What if they had someone like that buy Pittsburgh in the future and then throw a ton of money at it and make them the next New York Yankees. Like, I don't think you should limit it just based on market size, and I don't think you should limit it based on a salary cap unless all the teams agree on it.
Well, look at what Golden State did. I mean, throughout the 90s and early 2000s, I mean, Golden State they were trash. And then they started acquiring, they started getting some of those guys, made it more attractive. And now you see people wearing Golden State merchandise, even out this way, that they've become more of a marketable team because of the success that they had. I mean, it does go together. And you look at when the Pirates were making the playoffs, they had an opportunity to make some investments, to spend some money, to go after some of these bigger name guys. I'm not guaranteeing that it was going to bring them success, but at least in that feeling that, hey, we're getting closer. We're putting the chips in to try to make an attempt to go for it, as opposed to just trading everyone off to the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox.
Yeah, and that's true, and it's going to come down to how many championships you can win at that point. Golden State, they're selling all that merchandise because they've won. They had a core group of guys for 5-6 years now that have run together. So let's say you're in high school for 4 years, you're in middle school for 4 years, or whatever it is. If that's a team that's winning the entire time, sure, merchandise is going to pop up, and those kids are going to probably be fans. And to be fair, with the social media stuff, maybe that's how sports evolve in the future. Maybe you get rid of ties to these cities, and you give a generic name like Golden State. How many kids do you think know that means California or even San Francisco or whatever?
Not many.
Probably not that many. They have no idea. So they don't even know where Golden State is. And so they're just like, whatever. I'll be a fan of them because they're always on TV. Then they ask their parents, like, hey, can I go to a game? They're like, hell no. We have to fly the whole way across the country. Or let's see if they're, like, if you're in Pittsburgh, where would you go see them play? You'd have to drive up to Cleveland. I mean, that's the closest team by a long shot, I would believe. I don't even know who would be the next closest. Detroit?
Yeah, probably Detroit.
So, I mean, you're kind of limited in terms of teams. So maybe you get rid of some of these monikers and you give them like fancy nicknames, and maybe that's the future. I don't know, because then you're still tying yourself to an identity. But if you have to move, like let's say they have to move out of San Francisco as Golden State, does that really tie you to that city? No. Look at the Raiders. What if they had just named their team like the California Raiders? I mean, now they're moving to Las Vegas, so they're leaving the state. But back before that, they're bouncing back and forth up the coast. Who would have cared if they would have moved teams? You wouldn't have to change the identities. So maybe, I mean, look at Carolina. They gave the Carolina Panthers that name because they started their career playing in Clemson Stadium, Death Valley. I don't know what the actual name of it's called. Is it Tiger Stadium? But they played their games there. And so instead of naming it the North Carolina or the Charlotte Panthers, they named Carolina, and now you have more flexibility. Same with the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, let's say if Raleigh doesn't want to, they could just move right to Charlotte. And then you still have another big market, and you can try hockey in that market if it doesn't work in Raleigh. If they don't want to leave the area. I mean, I don't think they're going to. I think the area's been successful as they made their run this year in the playoffs. But let's see what happens. I think that could be the future. Get rid of ties to cities because you never know. And with kids these days, they don't have a tie to cities like that because you can watch games from wherever you want to. And it'll be interesting to see because even the NBA, they have a television app now where you can pay $1 or something just to watch the end of the games. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
So if you go on and I don't know if it rolled out this year or maybe it's something they talked about for next year, but if you want to, you can download the NBA TV app on like your PlayStation or your Roku or whatever you watch stuff on. And if there's a game going on and you see like, oh, that's a tight game and there's nothing else on, you can do like a pay-per-view, and depending on how much time's left, it's usually like $1 or something, I think is what they were aiming for. So a way for them to pick up quick bucks. And I think they were even doing pay-per-view tickets where if you wanted to buy the entire game, it might cost you $10, or like you can buy the second half for $5 and maybe the last 2 minutes for $1. I don't know if that's the finalized pricing, but that is how I saw it laid out. And to me, that would be a pretty fair price because for a lot of fans on this coast that want to watch Golden State, if you're staying up that late, you don't know if you're going to be awake. Maybe you're writing a paper for college. You see the games on, you want to throw it up. Why not? And I think all that will happen is it's going to encourage people to just pay for the full NBA TV. I think it's like $120. I know that's how much the NHL one costs, so maybe I'm wrong. And then you can watch any game you want except for blackouts. And that's my last beef. Get rid of blackouts. And I think you get rid of a lot of this All-Star voting issue with MLB as well. Because MLB map is ridiculous. North Carolina is split. If I wanted to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates, I couldn't watch them play if they were having a series against Washington. I couldn't watch them play if they were having a series against Baltimore. Because for whatever reason, those teams own the entire East Coast corridor, all the way down through Virginia Beach, down through the Outer Banks, over to Raleigh. And then if you're on the line, you might also have a crossover where you can't watch any Atlanta Braves games. So you're losing 3 entire teams that you can't watch. And that's just my state. I know some other states are worse. And so I think if they got rid of that, because if I'm let's say right now, if I was a Braves fan and you're in that same area, you can't watch Braves. You can't even watch when they go to Washington. And they're in their division, so they play them like 20 games a year or something like that. So you're cutting down 162 games, cut those in half, all the ones that are in Atlanta or whatever, and then you can't watch them play basically at all. And I think that's just wrong. So if you cut all that out, and maybe with the new television contract that they signed, Major League Baseball, where I think Fox Sports or whatever now owns most of the broadcasting rights, we'll see that rectified in the next year or two.
Well, now with the blackouts, what is the reasoning for them to go into a blackout situation?
It used to be cable television, from what I understand. So, like, for example, in Carolina, the Braves were out because you have Fox Sports South. When the Hornets came back as the Bobcats, I believe then Fox had a spinoff for Fox Sports Carolinas, where they featured the Panthers, the Hornets, or the Bobcats at that time, and then the Hurricanes. Before that, I don't think that they had that, because then you really only had the Panthers. I don't think they had a whole network dedicated to them. So I think they were thrown into Fox Sports South, and I think that's why Carolina's kind of split right now, is because they have a Fox Sports Carolina. Guess what? That Carolina's network does not have a baseball team. So you're going to get random games from the Braves, you're going to get random games from the Orioles, and you're going to get random games from the Nationals. And because of that, it's all split up. So you're getting blacked out for them because they want you to buy that cable package. They want you to buy Fox Sports. For Pittsburgh fans, if you're listening, that's AT&T Network, Sports Network. I think they own the rights. It used to be Root Sports.
Yeah.
And before that, it was Fox Sports Pittsburgh. So those ones are why you have the blackouts. They want you to pay for them. So they don't want you to just buy MLB TV for $120. They want you to buy cable network for $60 a month. And then they get that split from whatever to Fox Sports. So it's kind of an outdated thing.
But it just seems like you're still getting your, like, as a professional franchise, whether you're paying the cable network or you're paying, to have it streamed, you're still getting your money one way or the other. I would assume. I don't see how this hurts them to keep the blackouts in place.
And I'll say, I don't know how it benefits them, because if you look at how much money Netflix made, why wouldn't they team up? Or could you imagine if all of the sports network or the sports leagues teamed up? And I don't think that they would do it just because I think NFL would want more of a split, and they would deserve it, to be honest. But could you imagine if they were like, hey, we're just going to throw together a network of hockey, basketball, football, and baseball? Or hell, even if NFL and MLB teamed up, because that would give you sports coverage from spring training in March all the way through the fall, and then you would have football then to carry you all the way to February. That would almost be like a year-long streaming thing. Because I think the reason why networks don't want to go into their own NFL streaming TV is people are only going to subscribe then for September, October, November, December, 4 months, and then you just cancel it and then wait for it to come back. And I think that's what scares them.
Well, that makes sense, but I also think, like, when with the NFL Sunday Ticket, I would have liked to have been able to see, back when I was getting it, that it would be nice that even after the season's over, or even if you're missing certain games, like if I'm watching Pittsburgh, but something happens during, say, the Raiders game, that I want to go back and watch. It would be nice to be able to go back into that, access it, and pull up that game and rewatch it, as opposed to just waiting for it to come back through on the replay cycle.
And that's something that I would like to see too. I would like to see them have sort of like an on-demand. And ESPN used to stream like this. We used to watch games all the time where you could pick 4 games, put it up on your TV, have another computer have another 4 games on, and we would watch 8 games on the weekend.
Absolutely.
And so I know that used to be a thing because I used to have Matt over all the time to watch games. And like he said, for football, it would be nice if they even gave you some split screen options, because I think the old ESPN app, and this was before anyone else used it, it was mainly only used for college football, but you could watch any game that wasn't on like sort of their major network. So if you wanted to watch some of the smaller schools, I could put the Michigan game on the antenna and stream it straight from ABC or Fox, whatever it's on, and then have my computer show up the secondary games. Like Illinois is not on TV, Indiana, maybe Northwestern, and Minnesota, let's say. And I could watch 5 Big Ten games at the same time, and then it would give me something to turn back to. Oh, Michigan's playing Middle Tennessee State. It's a blowout. Let me just switch to one of these other 4. You click on it, and it would switch it to the big screen TV or whatever. And we watched that. There was that one Cal game where the guy almost broke his neck. Do you remember that play?
Yes.
And we only saw that because we were watching 2 or 3 games at the same time, because I want to say that happened around the same time. There was like an Iowa-Michigan State game that came right down to the wire that Iowa won on a slant pass. And so like you're able to watch 2 or 3 games at the same time. With today's network and streaming, you couldn't do that. You could pick one. We'd never get that Cal game.
No.
We'd never be able to watch that because Pac-12 is not on anything. And then to even have both up at the same time on the same TV, it just wouldn't happen because they don't let you split screen it like they used to. So that's one thing I'd like to see change, but we'll see what happens. Got anything else on that?
No.
It's going to be our what do we call this? The mixed bag or something. I forget what we named this show. Grab bag. Because after this, we don't have NHL's over, so we'll be getting into the off-season stuff. The NBA's over. And we got something to hold us over here, Matt. College World Series. You got anything to... you want to go ahead and lead off on College World Series?
There wasn't a whole lot to lead off on. Noel's got their ass kicked. It was a tough game to watch, but you know, with it being the first lefty that they faced during this series, I knew that the bottom was going to drop out, and I really wish it could have been any other team but Michigan. But they came out and just couldn't put the bat on the ball.
I'll say this, that the format, when we came into it, we talked last week that we knew that both teams are advancing. I think Michigan and Florida State were both teams that were in the last 4 in. They started to announce that for basketball and now for baseball. And Michigan, there was a good chance if they don't come back against, I think it was Illinois in the Big Ten tournament, that they don't get in at all. Because the Big Ten has been considered kind of like a mid-major league, to be honest. Teams haven't made the World Series. Michigan was the last one to, I think, actually even get a World Series win since 1983. They made it again in 84, and I think they got swept. And I think Indiana made it in 2013, and I believe they got swept as well. So the Big Ten hasn't been doing anything. And for Michigan to come in and win 2 games is just unbelievable. Their head coach, Eric Bakich, I saw that he is the lowest paid coach in the College World Series tournament, which is 8 teams. And I would say, if you're Michigan, you brag all the time about having a large alumni network. Say it's the number 1 largest. Pay them. Pay them. Because you are not going to compete unless you have a top-tier coach. And as a Michigan guy, that's exactly what I want to see. I want to see them extend Bakich and say, look, we can compete in other sports. You can throw all your eggs in the football basket, but guess what? It hasn't been getting it done. You have teams, like I was thinking about this the other day. In my lifetime, Michigan has won a national championship in basketball. I would have been very young, but they still won it in my lifetime. They have one in football, 1997. So I was older. I clearly remember that one because of Charles Woodson. And they've won a couple in hockey. You have 4 major sports. Of all those 4 sports, I would have considered that since I graduated 2016 from Michigan, I would have thought I had maybe a 25% chance of them winning another football national championships in my lifetime, like another 40 years or so. They could win one. I would say hockey is a little bit higher, probably 30% chance, just because there's not that many teams. Basketball, I would say 20%. They've been close, but with all the corruption there, you don't know. And baseball, I would have said less than 1%. Haven't won one. There's no way that school is going to win one in my lifetime. And now here we're sitting there. So close, up 2-0 in the group stage. It's just a miracle to be there, and I'm happy for the ride. And surprisingly enough, Tommy Henry, I give him a shout-out, the pitcher for Michigan last night, threw an absolute gem. Left-hander, came in. He was drafted in the second round by the Diamondbacks.
Which made it a little bit less painful because it wasn't like they were bringing sloppy Stan in to pitch. Like at least he's a legit, second round draft choice. So it kind of takes some of that sting out.
Well, I said it coming in last week that Michigan has 2 or 3 pitchers that are top notch, and if major league caliber pitchers, that a lot of Big Ten teams don't have that kind of depth, and when you have that. And the way this format is set up, they're in a hell of a position. They
Absolutely.
need 3 more wins, and even if they just get through this round and into the championship round, anything can happen. It could be a matchup sting. But right now, the way their pitching staff is, I was worried about the bullpen. Tommy threw a complete game.
Yeah, it was a non-factor.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about that. And now you have basically your other 2 starting pitchers and your entire bullpen ready to go for you win one. You have the next 2 games. Get it done. The bats, questionable, and they're still questionable, but you only need 1 run to score if you can pitch a shutout. So they haven't been high-scoring games. I think Florida State has the same issue with the bats.
They were just hitting the ball at such a crazy rate the earlier part of the College World Series that going into last night, it was like in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, how long can they keep this up? How long are they? You kind of saw a little bit of a fade during the Arkansas game where they had to put it together in extra innings to pull it out. It was like, well, can they keep it going? And even like after the home run with the second hitter, I thought, well, that's shitty to give up a run that quick, but it's not that bad because the bats have been pretty successful. That so we're gonna be all right. And it was just they just couldn't get they were hitting the ball, but it was just right to someone.
Yeah, and to be honest, there was a couple. There was one that I think one of the guys from Michigan misjudged a little bit, and you thought, oh no, here we go again. If you watch the UCLA series, they had some errors which had them drop the second game and almost dropped the third game, but they're able to get it done, went on the road, and now anything can happen. Unfortunately, it's looking like whatever team wins on the Group 1, it's down to Michigan, and then you have Texas Tech and Florida State. They play tomorrow. They're looking like they're going to play a team from the SEC. You have Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, I think, in their winner's bracket, and they play tonight or tomorrow. And then I think right now is the loser's bracket game that was going on. Louisville was beating Auburn when we started recording, and I honestly don't have it up right now because we had the Facebook streaming issues. So that's one to keep an eye on. But for college baseball, I think it sends a clear message out there.
Louisville's up 4-1. It was suspended.
Yeah, 4-1. That's what I thought it was whenever we started. I didn't know it was suspended, but it sends a clear message. The teams that are out there that saying you can't compete, you can compete. And Coastal Carolina winning the national championship a few years ago, that set a picture that you don't have to be a big name school to win. I'm not saying Michigan's going to win. I would love to see it. I'm still skeptical. It doesn't matter what I say here. I could predict us to lose the next 2 and be out. But it doesn't matter because it's a ride they're not supposed to be on. And I hope the guys are enjoying it because now they're throwing their name out there and the program's going to be in a better position. And you can't tell me that when you have all these big schools that are in the Big Ten, like the Penn States should not have issues. And I know we have some Penn State listeners. They should not have issues with recruiting for men's basketball, which they are awful at. They should not have trouble with men's baseball because they're so close to Philly and a lot of the Northeastern guys that Michigan's just been gobbling up. And you can't tell me that with all the money they have that they can only recruit for football and then some women's sports and wrestling. Like that, you can't tell me that Penn State can only succeed in those sports. Why are they not better in some of the men's sports? I mean, look what happened with hockey. They started to get some money in there, very successful in a young program. That could just be young program bump. We don't know, but at least they're competing. But you have other sports like this. Why not? Why isn't Pitt any better? They're in the ACC now. They should have got a recruiting bump. Right now, you're looking at the ACC versus the SEC. If Louisville doesn't get it done and they're eliminated, and Florida State's eliminated, it's going to make it harder and harder for recruits to want to go to those schools when you're saying, look, we're winning 50 games a year here on the SEC.
Well, I think you got to look at what those programs are. Like, what are they? If you're having a team like Michigan that can carry the banner for baseball, then you don't have to put those eggs in the basket. Just like Vanderbilt doesn't have to put out a successful football program year in and year out. But when baseball rolls around, they can carry the banner for the SEC and put the money into the facilities and the things like that. Because I think when you start looking at the recruiting end of some of this, some of it boils down to what are the facilities like? What are the extra amenities that you can provide to attract those players in? And you're not going to be able to do it for every program. You know, Florida State's in a spot where they're trying to get the money for their football facility, and they're trying to get that standalone thing to keep up with Clemson. They're going to put their money towards football first, but now that the basketball program's picking up, they want to try to funnel some of that money towards that. There's also, you know, with baseball being as successful as they've been, you know, there's only so much money to go around, and unless you have the donors that are going to come out in droves and spending all the extra money, you got to pick and choose where you're going to put your money, and typically it goes to the programs that are going to make you money. And
Florida State's kind of in the same position that Michigan's in, where they're successful in a ton of sports. I mean, compared to the rest of their conference. Sure, they might not be as successful as like the Ohio States and Clemson's of football right now, but when's the last time Clemson or Ohio State has been in what did we play in basketball last year? Like the Elite Eight? Something like that. Michigan went to a national championship game. I know Ohio State went to one almost a decade ago now. But look at softball. Florida State won a championship. Michigan was in the finals, lost to Florida a couple years ago. Why is Michigan the only Big Ten team that can win in softball? Why are they the only Big Ten team? I mean, Indiana put a good run together, but they weren't able to capitalize on that. Why can't other teams, when you're getting this much money and TV networks, once your other sports start to grow, I think football will even follow. Because the Big Ten was so far behind for the longest time, they let the SEC get the momentum. And that's really what, I mean, I'm not the biggest ACC fan, but I know that if the ACC starts getting more successful, that's only going to hurt the SEC, and then it's going to help the Big Ten because you have recruits that are going to get spread around then. I don't want all of the teams. I mean, look at a team like South Carolina a few years ago in baseball. They win back-to-back national championships. Now you're having three other SEC teams right there ready to win it. I mean, Auburn's probably, there's a good chance they're eliminated, but then you still have two in the winning bracket on the other side, and it's going to be SEC versus whatever other conference makes it through, Big 12, ACC, or Big 10. And that's just another sport that I don't want to see the SEC hang their banner on, like, hey, we're kings of football. Hey, we're kings of whatever. They had basketball, too, for a while there. They had Florida make some runs. They had Kentucky. Other teams got to step it up. Big 10, yeah, sure, you guys can win a bunch of New Year's Six bowl games, the Iowas and Wisconsins, but where are you competing in these other sports? The major ones. And I'm saying major ones by the ones that have the professional sports leagues. You have the hockeys, which Big Ten could win at. They just have a brand new conference, but not a lot of teams play that. So you're really looking at football and then basketball and then baseball. You could also look at softball or even women's basketball. But you're still having women's basketball is a little bit tougher because you have the UConns that run it for a while, Notre Dame's. That seemed to be it doesn't seem like there's enough talent to spread wide in women's basketball to get multiple schools championships.
Well, you look at Baylor with Brittany Griner. You get one superstar and they can just carry your team.
Yeah, so I think that sport's a little bit different. But for the softballs, the baseball, some of these other ones, even track and field, I understand it's going to be tougher for the Big Ten teams to compete because you don't have the warmer weather. But now you have indoor track stuff. Get it done. Get it done. You're getting millions of dollars. Rutgers, pick a sport, Rutgers. Pick a sport and be successful at. At least Maryland has lacrosse or whatever they brought to the Big Ten. Their basketball team might be a mess with all these weird sanctions in their football team. God knows what's happening there. But put some money together and start to win. Because there's no reason that the rest of the conference, it seems like every time I'm looking at a championship, it's like, Florida State's always there, Michigan's always there, and then you always have like the teams that are always good in certain sports. Like, Duke and North Carolina are going to be there for basketball. But for baseball from the ACC, you had Virginia make some runs. They win their basketball national championship. Maybe they're next. I don't know. I think they won it in baseball a few years ago.
I think they might have.
So spread it around. But we'll see, because I think that only helps college as a whole. If you want these sanctions to go away from the FBI, you got to be able to split up your money and have success elsewhere. Because once they start regulating stuff even more, what sports are going to get cut? It's going to be all the non-revenue ones. Then you're going to come down to maybe only having 5-10 sports per school if they start forcing people to get paid. I think that would be something sad. And it would pretty much end college athletics as they're now.
Well, I mean, what they may end up doing with it is they may just transform them from the paid programs and just have more intramurals, where then it takes the scholarship aspect out of it, and they're still able to compete, they're still able to play, but they're not going to get paid.
And maybe that's what they do. I don't know. Let's get into we'll get into our last basketball wrap up pretty much for the year. The Toronto Raptors win the championship. Matt basically called it. I know I ripped on you last week because they didn't pull it off in 5 like you predicted. But they got it done in 6. I didn't think they'd win on the road. What are your thoughts on that game?
I think they lucked out. I think if Durant doesn't get hurt, I think he was showing that he was going to take the game over. He was putting up freak numbers. Went down with the Achilles injury. Underwent surgery. I think that really hurts him going into this offseason now, where they were anticipating him making a move potentially to the Knicks and trying to acquire that big market deal. Potentially with it being Achilles surgery, that could put him out almost a full calendar year. I don't know that he comes back as the same player, and I think that definitely ruined the chances of Golden State continuing their dynasty.
Yeah, and the other person is Klay Thompson. He gets injured as well, so I think after that injury happened, there was no way Golden State was going to win in 7. Just too many injuries. So you're right. Toronto put together a great game plan, though. Took advantage of it. They very easily could have been 2-2 going into that game 5. Instead, they were up 3-1, had a chance to win it. And sure, players get injured. Durant comes back, puts it together. They still would have had to win 3 in a row and 2 on the road for Golden State. And so regular season, I think that's how they got home court advantage. I don't know. But they win. First one to Toronto. I actually had a Toronto Raptors basketball hoop. Remember that when I was a kid?
I do.
I'm going to put a picture up on our Instagram, Southbound Sports, so follow us there. Because by the time they finally won a championship, the sun has weathered that down. No logo anymore. You can't tell that was it. They had... Back in the day, they had Marcus Camby. That was a sweet team on NBA Hang Time. Or
Damon
NBA
Stoudemire.
Yep. So good to see them getting it done. I hate teams from Canada winning, though. So I know that hurt the ratings, but...
And unfortunately, during their parade, they had a shooting, and a couple people were injured. There was no deaths. So I'm glad that they were able to not have anyone killed during their parade.
I think they said they had what was it, 1.5 million or something people like that. And to me, that's just crazy. And they were talking about possibly ending celebration parades. But at that point, is it really on the team? Is it really on the city? People are going to do crazy things. Luckily, they didn't either know what they were doing or it wasn't an actual...
Just firing aimlessly into the crowd.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but it's just crazy that whenever you're thinking of going and celebrating something, that you have to worry about your own safety these days. So sad to see that happen. I don't even know why someone would do that, and I hope that it doesn't end celebration parades. But because you can't really do, what are they going to do? They're going to start fencing them in. You're going to have people walk through metal detectors. You can't really do that in an open whole city. So I don't know. But good to see them win. I just like dinosaurs, so that's why I had that Raptors basketball hoop. And sweet logo. I wish it was more for a North American team, though. But let's get into I think we gave enough breakdown on some basketball. Let's get into the NHL. I know I was going to circle back around on this, but the Blues, they win the Cup, and their goalie was hot. Rookie goalie in the crease. I thought for sure the Bruins are going to win. I said on last week's show that I thought the Blues, getting late in the show, I'm starting to stutter. The Blues blew their chance last week, but instead, when the goalie's hot, it doesn't matter.
Nope.
Does not matter. I think they were out shooting them like 15-2, and I could be exaggerating a bit, and I think both chances for the Blues went in. Like they only had 2 shots and scored on both, which is the craziest thing, and that's just hockey. You're the better team, put them away. Why let it get to a Game 7?
Yep.
They went on the road, and they got it done. And I'm happy for them. It was actually their first championship. I did not know that going in. I know St. Louis is usually a city of champions for them, at least the baseball side. And greatest show on turf, back when that existed. So finally, hockey gets on the map. And I've said it before. I've heard a couple people ask me off the air. They were like, why would you want the Blues to win? That's dumb. Doesn't your man Tom Brady play in Boston? And I was thinking, why do I care if Boston gets a championship? Tom Brady doesn't get a commemorative Bruins win or ring that he gets to wear around.
He probably does.
He probably would if you asked. But at that point, I was like, why would it be better? I look at it. Is it going to help the Penguins win a cup again if the Bruins win? No. But maybe if other teams start to win, it will spread out the talent a bit, get some St. Louis a couple wins, and it helps the sport. Helping the sport only helps get better players. You can see a better product and more awareness, maybe a better television deal, because ultimately that helps me. Talked about it for some of the sports back about streaming a little bit earlier in the show. But if I can get better awareness because St. Louis wins a cup and they see an uptick in television viewers there, maybe NHL TV stops blackouts, then it would help me because then I could watch every game. I always loved watching the Red Wings. I always loved watching the Colorado Avalanche growing up. You had the Penguins. There are some teams that I just like to watch. And right now with all the blackouts and stuff, it's tough to watch, especially because Penguins are always blacked out because they're always on national television because Crosby. Red Wings, because of their history, they're mostly always blacked out. You have other big teams that are almost always blacked out, Chicago, Boston, even LA. So it's just very tough. Having other teams win the cup is better for fans. It doesn't help if the same team wins it over and over. It just doesn't. Same with basketball. It's better for Toronto to win, even though it's not a team from the United States. I'll go on record with that. I think it's better for the sport. Helps kids in Canada just grow and say, hey, you know what? That's our team. Like We Are the North, whatever their campaign was. Helps kids watch it, and that's the only way to grow the sport. If kids don't watch it because it's the same team winning all the time, or like Matt said, you just give in and start wearing Golden State stuff because it seemed like they won every year. But guess what now? What if there's a kid that just like dinosaurs, had a Toronto shirt? Now he's riding high. All those Golden State kids at his school. So I'll say that. But crazy they got it done. And I'm hoping that it leads to better negotiations next year for the NHL or whenever their television network's up. Because I heard they were talking about strike. And that's so dumb. I think all the sports were talking about it coming up. And so when you have that and players not playing, it just hurts the fans. So we'll see what happens, though. Let's get into our Final Bell stuff. You got anything off for the Final Bell, Matt?
Just a tidbit that I picked up from football. One of the things going into summer with 7-on-7 season coming up, looking at things to help your team out, I picked up this tidbit back when I was in North Carolina, and I really like this, where you take 15 plays and you look at formations and you look at stuff that just in general you want your team to know, and you put together roughly like 10 to 15 plays that are going to be things that you're really going to be running during the season, and use that as part of like a script. Set it up so that as you're going into your 7-on-7s, you're not just drawing plays up in the dirt. And I know there are teams out there that they'll run completely separate playbooks and do all the crazy cheat stuff just to try to win cheap tournaments and belts and different things. But I think it helps your team transitioning from summer to the fall when you have a list of, okay, when they recognize you, especially the skill guys, can I get into certain formations correctly? Can I run, the base couple plays the right way? I think it definitely is something that carries over from 7-on-7 to camp when you put the pads on, that you're not throwing things at them that they have no idea where it's coming from. They kind of already know these are going to be the plays that we're going to be using when the camp hits. So they're practicing them in that setting, and then it transitions easier when they make it to camp.
Very cool. Definitely, we're going to try to get some more coaching stuff on here because, like I said, this week wrapped up basically the NBA, NHL seasons. We have another week of college baseball. I don't know if that would wrap up by the show next week. It actually might be going on during the show. And then that's pretty much it for the summer. You just have baseball. We have the All-Star game coming up. Women's World Cup, which the United States has been kicking ass at so far. So we're going to be getting into that next week. But I'm trying to get some football stuff. And I'm going to end the show with some football news. XFL fans we are. Our man, He Hate Me, was missing. He is found safe. I don't know if you saw that. He was found safe about an hour ago, or I guess an hour before the show started, in Lancaster County in South Carolina. He was found missing. Named Rod Smart. Actually played for the Carolina Panthers after the XFL folded. Known for wearing the name He Hate Me on his jersey. Don't know anything was going on. I just saw that he was missing. Gave me a flashback. And it also reminded me that the articles on the AAF have started to come out. Saw during the season, they ended abruptly. I don't know if you saw it, but ESPN put out a gigantic piece on how the league fell apart and how they tried to paint that filmmaker Ebersol in a positive light. About how, and that he's friends with them because he did 30 for 30s or whatever. I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
I tried to figure it out, but my confusion last time was his dad was one of the guys that did it. I think he helped fund the XFL the first time. So that's why I was confused on the names. I just see Ebersol and I think that's the guy, but apparently it's his son that helped fund this league. And they really painted out the Carolina Hurricanes owner, Dundon, if that's how you pronounce it, as the bad guy in the AAF. But how he came in and said that he had the funds to fund the season, and once he saw the finances, he said that he was out. And to me, that makes me think, did they not show him the full finances and they're trying to do a bait and switch? I highly doubt that his whole idea would be to buy the league only to fold it. There's been some rumors about him just wanting the technology for some of the sports stuff. Gambling, I think they had a gambling perspective where you could pick next play and stuff like that. So I don't know. But the XFL, they always try to throw in that the XFL failed every time ESPN mentions the AAF. So I hope that this time Vince McMahon can get it together and do something that's exciting. Get some extra football because, like I said, you buy NFL TV, you can't stream it year round. I would pay, and this is my callback, I would pay $10, $20 a month year round if I could watch any major sport that I wanted to on demand. Netflix is $15 a month now? I would pay at least $15 if you got NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB together. I would even think about it if you just had MLB and NFL, because I think that would give you enough year-round content. The only month that you could really quit is maybe February. Save yourself 1 month because then spring training starts up. And I guess if you didn't want to see spring training, you just renew back in April. But I think if you get that, if you add in even hockey to those three, then that gives you the Stanley Cup playoffs to fill that void. And then you're technically year-round if the NBA doesn't want in. But I could see that being a thing. You could also see if MLS wants in. But I think if they started a North American sports network type thing where you could watch any, and hell, maybe even just cut out the Canada teams. I don't know. I would like them to be a part of it just because I don't want to cut out anything. But if you had like I guess North America would encompass all of that. So get it done. That's my goal. That's what I want to see, is a network that I can stream and not have to go through ESPN and see their reporting. Just give me an NFL guy. They already stick out old retired players on the field. I mean, do you see the ESPN show? It's like Charles Woodson, Randy Moss, and someone else. And then they have like Hasselbeck, who was a quarterback forever. He's on the sideline, or I guess maybe his brother. I don't even know how many of those played in the league. You have like old coaches. Like they still have coaches like Mike Ditka from the 80s. Bill Cowher now from a decade ago giving insight. So give me that content so that I can watch it on demand. You'd have me for life. So that's my final thought. You got anything else, Matt?
Absolutely. Check out the website. Check out the store. Check out our stuff. Support the podcast.
Yeah, we're getting some big stuff and some partners. So keep an eye out for that. And definitely going to be getting some more stuff out for you guys. So thanks for listening. Southboundsports.com. You can check all of that stuff out. We've been making improvements, trying to get that rush together before football season kicks off. And it's going to be another exciting year. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.